Hello, welcome back to my channel. Happy June, happy Pride. It's been a little while since I've just done like a sit down chatty video talking with you about books that I've actually read recently. I haven't really talked in depth about many of the books that I've read this year, so I figured I would just do kind of a wrap up of all of the books that I've read thus far in the first half of the year. I have read about like 20 books-ish. It's been an interesting reading year. I think that I've been saying for like the past year and a half that I've been in like a reading slump, but I think the truth of the matter is like my reading tastes are changing. I feel like I'm really just in a transitional period with reading, and I think I am kind of discovering, you know, what books I really want to be spending my time on. And I don't know, I just don't do as much of just like picking something up randomly and reading it. It takes me a long time of like thinking and like going through a whole process to actually pick up a book, which has been an issue for me. I've also just been very overwhelmed by all of the choices that I have to read, and like I want to read so many books eventually, but there's just so many choices all the time, and it kind of exhausts me, and then I just avoid reading and I watch like 10 TV shows in a row instead. So I'm gonna try to do this fairly quickly as I can, because it is in fact 80 degrees inside my house and it is even hotter outside, so it's a little warm. Also, one more thing before we begin, if you can see in the background, I still have all of my Percy Jackson stuff up because I'm going to be starting the process of doing my second video in my Percy Jackson recap series very soon. And if you haven't watched that video yet, you definitely should. And if it's not your cup of tea, link it to someone who it is their cup of tea, because I worked really hard on it and I had a lot of fun with it, and I am going to be having a lot of fun making the next two videos in the series. So yeah, tune in or send it to someone who you think would want to tune in. Okay, so the first book that I read in 2022 in January was, funnily enough, Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. In the beginning of the year, especially at the beginning of January, I was still working my library job. My very short-lived library job. I didn't get fired. That made it sound like I got fired. I didn't get fired. I got a new job. Literally, it was so boring. It was so boring. I loved the job, but it was really, really understimulating for me, and I feel like I just needed more to do. But one of the things that I was allowed to do at my library job is when I was on the desk, we could read books on Libby. You only really have like so many books that are instantly available to you. So I would just kind of look through the list every day basically, and I would see what was currently available to read and I would read it. I actually got through a good number of books reading while I was on the desk at that library job, but the last one that I read there fully and completely was Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda. I reread it. I had read it years ago, like when the movie was coming out and everything, and I just reread it just because, I don't know, serotonin, vibes, whatever. I think I left my rating, yeah, I left my rating at 4 stars, because this book, honestly, like, it's really not the best. It's, you know, it's a product of its time. It didn't even come out that long ago. You know, it has the Harry Potter references, it has this, it has that. That book came out the year that I graduated from high school and was going to college, and I think I read it like maybe the year after. It was very relevant for me, and I was also like a theater kid, like Simon is in the book. And like, so that book, it's a product of its time, but it's also a product of like my time in high school, like very accurately. I can't so much see myself in too many current YA stories, contemporary stories that come out, but that one in particular, it feels like a sort of time capsule of my high school experience, and just like a cute queer story maybe based in like that time period for me. So I don't know, I hope that made sense, but it was just like a cute quick read for me, and yeah, it was my first read of the year. It was enjoyable. And can I just say, like, I really loved the movie when it came out, but they really fucked up a lot of stuff in that movie because the friendship dynamics are not anywhere near as toxic in the book as they are in the movie. And like, I don't know, that movie, like that last third of the movie gives me bad vibes. Like, it was good up until then, but yeah, the book is definitely better in this case. After that, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry for the first time. I honestly never really planned on reading Beach Read, even after I read People We Meet on Vacation, and honestly, People We Meet on Vacation like kind of changed my life. Even then, I never really had a pull to read Beach Read just because I had heard so many mixed things about it. But I don't know, I just kind of like was thinking about it and I was like, you know what, I feel like I should give it a shot because a lot of people said that Beach Read, when it came out, I remember a lot of people saying that it kind of had a literary fiction vibe and not really only a romance. And when I thought about my experience with People We Meet on Vacation, that kind of hint of literary fiction or just like, you know, general fiction or whatever, that hint in People We Meet on Vacation was a really big part of why I liked it so much. It kind of felt unique in the sense of being a romance, but like kind of having a little bit more depth to it. I did pick up Beach Read, and yeah, I just need to kind of trust my gut from here on out because I absolutely loved Beach Read. I loved every minute of it. And I just think that Emily Henry, she's just an author that gets me. Like, she gets me real deep in here. Like, she's so talented, such a talent for conveying emotions and depicting relationships in a really, really deep way. And I feel like her books are, at least Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation, we're gonna kind of circle back around to this in a little while, but I feel like Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation are character studies as well as romances, as well as literary fiction. And I love character studies. Like, more than anything, I absolutely love character work and really getting into the nitty-gritty of, you know, a character and their emotions, motives, what makes them tick, etc. And I find that really fascinating in a contemporary story. So Emily Henry is a master at that, and I love her. I will read anything that she puts out. Next up, I read The Viscount Who Loved Me. I read this in February, or no, the end of January, beginning of February. So before season 2 came out. If you follow me on social media, you know I was obsessed with season 2 even before it came out. Like, I wanted it so badly because I knew Simone Ashley was cast and I was just looking forward to it for her only. And look how that turned out. Hello. So moral of the story is I have amazing taste. But anyways, I'd been anticipating Bridgerton season 2 and I knew I wanted to read the book before the show came out because if I didn't, then I probably wouldn't read it. And I just kind of wanted to get like an estimate of what I could expect for season 2 and like what I could expect for the characters and everything. I put out a reading vlog where I read it and I gave all my thoughts, but I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously enjoyed season 2 more. I think that almost all, if not all of the changes that they made were good and were necessary and just kind of were a better fit for television for adapting that story. And yeah, so I really love both the show and the book. I gave the book 4.5 stars, but yeah, I definitely do prefer the show version. So after that, I read Baby and the Late Night Howlers by Catherine Moon, which is actually the first book in the Sweet Omegaverse series. I don't know if I've talked about Lola and the Millionaires on this channel. I don't think I have. I've read all of the books in the series by Catherine Moon. There's actually like 2 different authors writing for the series, but I've read all of Catherine's books in the series. I actually read all of the books backwards. So I ended up reading Bad Alpha, which is like the 5th book or something like that. And then I went backwards and I read Lola and the Millionaires part 1 and part 2. which I think are like 2 and 3 in the series. And then I ended up reading Baby and the Late Night Howlers this year, which is the first book in the series. And I love all of these books so much. I will say I do still think Lola and the Millionaires are my favorites of the series because those books are genuinely amazing, like absolutely amazing. But Baby and the Late Night Howlers was fun too, so I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read 2 of the new Teen Titans graphic novels by Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. I read number 2 and number 3, which are the ones about like Beast Boy and Raven and whatever. I gave them 3 and 4 stars respectively. These are just like cute. I was in fact in a bit of a reading slump at this time, so I just like needed something to like get me back up off my feet. Yeah, these were fun, cute. I really don't know anything about Teen Titans. I was not raised on Cartoon Network at all. I think it was on Cartoon Network. Pretty sure. I never watched the show growing up, but I'm fascinated by them now. These are just like cute graphic novels, whatever. And then next up, I read The War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout. My battery is dying. So then I read The War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Oh Lord, y'all, this is okay. So let's get into this, right? Maybe I'll go dig up the clip of me saying this, but like I said at some point on this channel that I was giving up on the From Blood and Ash series by JLA. This was like after the last book came out. What was that called? The Crown? No. Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. No. The Crown of Gilded Bones. Ultimately, I just don't know if I'm really going to continue this series because, like I mentioned, my favorite character is Kieran, who is basically a third wheel in every aspect of the phrase to Poppy and Castile. What I want out of that relationship is a polyamorous relationship. Like, I want all 3 of them to be together, and not only do I think that that's just not going to happen in the way that I want it to happen, but this series has a huge fan base and a lot of them are really against polyamory, especially in the series. It just doesn't make sense to me because of the way the relationship and the dynamics between all 3 of them have been centered from like the very beginning of the series. It kind of came in more towards the end of From Blood and Ash, but it was literally a focal point for the majority of the second book, and it just came in even harder in this third book in my opinion. And so people who are so against that relationship or the idea of that relationship between the 3 of them, it just doesn't really compute to me because it's like literally a plot point at this point in the series. And Jennifer L. Armentrout is just kind of like stringing us along. By us, I mean people who want all 3 of them to be together. So I don't know yet if I'm going to continue the series. I literally have it on my channel somewhere. I said that I was giving up on the series because I knew that it wasn't going to give me what I wanted. It felt like JLA was trying to play me because I knew from the very first book that there was potential for the 3 main characters of this series to be in a polyamorous relationship. I knew that there was potential because they were hinting at it in text, in the book, on the page, everything. It was there. Granted, in the first book, it's just like a little like joke at the end of the book, so it's like, okay, cool, whatever. In the second book, it is made very clear to the reader that there's a chance that these 3 main characters, even though 2 of them are like having their own romance and they're kind of married or whatever, it was made very clear to the reader that for plot reasons, there is a chance that these 3 characters who already have emotional bonds with each other, that they're gonna have like a threesome for plot reasons. This sounds so stupid, but you know, walk with me here. So this is literally on the page. It is brought up incessantly because, as we know, JLA is a very repetitive writer. She is going to nail in this information by mentioning it 10 times minimum per book. So we read the first book. I was like, okay, I'm keeping an eye on it. Second book, it was made even more clear. I was like, okay, I'm keeping an eye on it. Maybe in the third book, we're gonna see some development here between these 3 main characters' relationships with each other, and we're gonna kind of see something form because that was really the direction that it was, that's the direction that it was giving me personally. The third book rolled around And I read it, and again, we were just getting incessant hints at something happening between the three of them, and it was just really coming up to nothing. It's kind of seeming like she was prolonging it, or she was including it more as a joke than anything. And me, who honestly is polyamorous, and I really enjoy reading stories about polyamorous relationships that are healthy, because I think that it is a beautiful and viable option for relationships for people who are polyamorous. I was feeling just like, you know, this is not for me. It's seeming like a little bit of a joke. Let me take a step back and maybe kind of bow out of this one. So then The War of Two Queens comes out, and I wake up to actually the Twitter streets in shambles and on fire. I could hear the sirens outside my window for book Twitter because of The War of Two Queens and how apparently the polyamory had finally occurred. Everyone was shaken to their cores because it came out of nowhere. It did not, in fact, come out of nowhere, because I have been waiting for it since book one. So, all you need to know is that it happened. It happened, right? Like, it actually happened. And everyone was mad about it and rating the book 1 star on Goodreads. And so I just rated it 5 stars. I skimmed through the book. I didn't read the entire book, right? And you can put me on trial for it. You know, I will admit to skimming this one book in my lifetime, because let's be real here. I was here for one thing. I'm not here for the plot. I'm not here for the plot. And so I read the majority of the book. I would say I read about 60% of the book. And I went on Goodreads and I rated it 5 stars as a protest. That's what happened with that. It was a very eventful day for me this year. Very memorable, I should say. There was just complete outrage. I don't know what JLA plans to do for the future of the series, but people really need to get their heads out of their asses and read the books and read the series that are going to give you what you want, and that are not very plainly moving in a direction that you are ignoring entirely. It was just very appalling for me as a polyamorous person to see the reaction, because people were saying, oh no, it's bad polyamorous rep. I did not think so. I did not think so. And I didn't see one single polyamorous person saying so. People were clearly just mad that a third person was brought into the mix. It was upsetting to see the reaction to that, even though this is not the best series in the world. Obviously polyamory can be handled even better, but it was weird. It was weird. The whole entire situation was weird. So I give it 5 stars. Yeah. So anyways, moving on. Next up, I actually read The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This I read early because I got an arc of it, a physical arc, which I really do not get those too often. I had been really anticipating that book ever since hearing about it sometime last year, I think. This is an Arab adult fantasy written by an Arab adult. Can you believe? Can you actually imagine? I actually really couldn't imagine that for the longest time, and suddenly this book was sitting on my lap and I read it, and this is actually just an amazing, it's an amazing book. It's an amazing debut, especially. I do think that this book kind of suffered a bit just from maybe being this author's first book and their debut book. It wasn't really fully up to my standards on some of the character work and a bit of the pacing, I think, but this was really like just a really fun action adventure story. It's just so authentic, and it has Arabic on the page transliterated into English letters and spelled out and everything, and it's not in italics. It's completely in plain text, and there are no translations, but I think non-Arabic speakers can Google the terms and they'll come up pretty easily. But just to like see that in a book and just see such like loving and authentic representation in a fantasy book was just, it's just a feeling I'll never get used to, but I will also never get tired of it. There are definitely some like similarities to, I guess I could say, City of Brass. That's the only desert fantasy that people know, unfortunately. But if you like City of Brass, I definitely encourage you to pick this one up because it's more authentic than City of Brass. It is technically an adult fantasy, but I would say it's more like new adult. It honestly reads a little bit like a YA fantasy in terms of the pacing and in terms of just how easy of a read it is. It's not really dense in any form of the term. It's very, very easy to read with lovable characters and humor and great dialogue and beautiful writing. I give it like a 4.25 stars. I definitely think there's room for improvement, and I definitely think that there will be improvement in the second book and the rest of the series, which I am really, really excited for. But I definitely encourage y'all to pick this book up and give it a chance. If you like things like City of Brass, We Hunt the Flame, etc. Okay, so we're moving on into like the end of March, beginning of April, and this was kind of the comeback of my Bridgerton era because the season actually came out at this time. So right after season 2 came out and like I was pushed fully into my obsession, I ended up reading both Colin and Penelope and Benedict and Sophie's books. So of course, first I read Benedict's book. His is the third book. I rated it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It's like a Cinderella retelling, like a pretty true Cinderella retelling. And I don't love Cinderella retellings, to be honest with you, because just the concept of like the Cinderella story pisses me the fuck off, because I hate that she is neglected by her family. And to be honest, if I were her, I probably would have killed them. But it was a good Cinderella retelling, I guess. Like, it did it in a well enough way that I liked it, and it was a fun time. These Bridgerton books are so easy to read, it's actually ridiculous. I fly through them in like 2 days maximum. It was kind of fun. They're mindless fun. And then I read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. That is Colin and Penelope's book. I read this because I was curious. This was before the news that they are doing Colin and Penelope in season 3 of Bridgerton. So I was just curious. Like, I wanted to see, because after season 2, neither of those characters are what you would call likable. And so I wanted to see what direction they could go in to make them likable, especially with each other. Like, how are they going to convince me to care immensely about this romance between the two of them? Because it's just not there right now. Like, it's not there right now. I have faith that season 3 will get me, and like their chemistry and everything will become a thing, but right now it's not there. But I read the book, I gave it 3.5 stars. I really did enjoy the book, honestly, and it's because Penelope does have an extreme character change. Like, she becomes way less shy, way less of a pushover, and she kind of starts speaking her mind a bit more, and that really, it made me like her a lot more, honestly. And I enjoyed this book. And then I read Looking by Katrina Jackson. Speaking of polyamory, if you would like to read about a very healthy polyamorous situation, definitely read this book. It is about a married couple, a man and a woman. They have been married for a while, they have kids, they are looking to open up their relationship to someone else. So they meet another woman and bring her into the relationship, and it's beautiful. I really loved it. I thought it was great, and it's a very short read. So, and here we are at the end of April, getting into my Heartstopper era. So of course, Heartstopper came out at the end of April, and it shook the world. The world stopped spinning on its axis for a minute when that show came out, and I will admit, I was skeptical of Heartstopper. I know it's been a huge thing on BookTube for years, and it's been everywhere. Everyone has read it. Everyone read it even before the show came out, like even before it became like a worldwide craze. Everyone on BookTube has been raving about it, and I was just convinced that it was not for me. Story To put it plainly, it looked very white from the outside. It didn't really seem like I was a part of the target audience for that story for a long time, just from what I could see on the surface. I didn't know about Talonel. I didn't know about anybody else other than Nick and Charlie. I watched the show and I was proven wrong. I fell head over heels for the story. I fell head over heels for these characters. I just love absolutely everything about the show. I've watched it 5 times. I've watched it 5 times in the like month and a half that it's been since it's been out. I went and I read the graphic novels on Webtoon. I read all of them straight through. I had the most amazing time reading them. I did get into the later volumes of the graphic novel where it gets a bit heavier and we really get to delve more into these characters and like their issues and stuff like that. But even though the story gets heavier, and I'm sure obviously the show in seasons 2 and 3 is going to get heavier as well, even though the subject matters get heavier and everything, the tone of the story remains ultimately comforting over anything. And I have to give it to Alice Oseman. I did not think that they were an author for me, but I was really pleasantly surprised by Heartstopper, both the graphic novels and the show, and I'm a fan. I am a fan. I don't know that Alice Oseman's written works, like the novel works, are for me, but I plan on giving them a try. I plan on giving them a try. So obviously I gave all of those 5 stars. I'm like looking on my Goodreads on my phone right now, and I rated Book Lovers in April. I read Book Lovers early in January. That was actually one of the first books that I read this year. I think I read it after Beach Read actually, but I didn't give it a rating until after the book had come out, and I had like thought about it for like 4 months at that point. So let's really get into that, shall we? So I'm pretty sure everyone has read Book Lovers by this point, right? And we know it's about Nora and Charlie and Nora's little sister. Nora and her little sister go on a vacation to a small town in North Carolina. It's supposed to be just like a summer to the 2 of them that they could spend together before Nora's little sister has like her 3rd child or something. It's some sister bonding time. It's meant to get Nora away from New York City and away from her workaholic lifestyle. She's a literary agent and everything. I think this is the first book in this video that I'm describing. And so yeah, her sister takes her to this small town for like a vacation. Nora is still working. Nora is still working. A lot of the book revolves around the relationship between Nora and her little sister, because Nora was forced into a motherly role, taking care of her sister and kind of raising her from a young-ish age, because their mother passed away. And even when the mother was alive, Nora had to take on this role because their mother was like a little bit flighty. And this has become a source of trauma for Nora because she cannot let go, even though Libby at this point in the story is like in her 20s. Like she has like 3 kids, a husband, a house, like a, you know, she has a whole life of her own. They are grown-ass adults. Even though they are grown-ass adults, she cannot let go of this notion that she needs to provide for her. She is obsessed with this thing that like her and Libby need to be near each other at all times, and that she really needs to like watch over her, provide for her, etc. Nora doesn't really handle her own life like the same care. As I said in my Goodreads review, this was for the older sisters and the New York lovers, and I am neither of those things. Still very good though, but my least favorite from Miss Henry thus far. And that pretty much sums it up, because not only does Nora have the older sister trauma, I am the youngest sibling, so I couldn't really see eye to eye with her on everything that she was going through in that part of the story. She also has this obsession with like needing to stay in New York City because it's like the best place in the entire world, which is bullshit to me because I don't like New York. I think New York is a great place to visit now and again, but I have no love for New York City. I don't have any stars in my eyes when I think about that city. It is not somewhere that I aspire to live. It is not any of that for me. Like, I'm a good old Southern girl. I will be staying my ass in Texas. I love the hospitality. I love the food. I love the atmosphere and like the welcoming nature of the South, the nature, the warmth of the people, you know, besides the racist ones. But you know, like the South just has a charm for me, and I don't think of New York City that way at all. I feel like that part of the story, the like New York propaganda that was being fed to me, it was not the book's fault, but it was the fault that I have read so many books like that are just romanticizing New York. Just not for me. Like, I don't like that at all. That was a part of the story that was really not for me, and I didn't care about the sister side story. I only cared about the romance. The romance was great, but there was not enough of it for me to fully fall head over heels for the story, because the romance was just one of the many plots of the book, and it just it was fine. It was fun. It did make me cry, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, like I said, good, 3.5, but not my favorite from Miss Henry at all. And then of course, very, very recently, in fact, I reread Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is one of my favorite books in the entire world. It is a perfect book in my opinion. I have thought that since the first time I read it in March of 2020. There's just so many things that this book accomplishes and that it does right for me personally. It just has so many elements that I love in books compiled into one. Set in the early 1900s in that era in England and London. It's Shadowhunters, which I already fucking love. It has a very, very compelling main love story and then multiple other compelling love stories on the side. It has a huge cast of characters, and this cast of characters are the children of characters that I already loved so much, and then I ended up loving this cast of characters even more. It has a Persian main character who is just like one of my favorite characters in the entire world. There's just so much drama, and it has everything for me. It has everything for me. Chain of Gold will never not be a perfect book in my eyes. Like, I'm so sorry. It really will never be. I am not rereading Chain of Iron until closer to Chain of Thorns, which is coming out in January of next year, which is probably better for my sanity, because if it had come out in November in the midst of my seasonal depression, I don't think that would have been good for anyone. So January 2023, inshallah, Chain of Thorns reading vlog incoming. That vlog is going to be like an hour and a half minimum, and it's going to show a really bad side of me, because when this series ends, I'm scared for myself. So the next one that I have on here is a webtoon on the app Webtoon. It's called Boyfriends. This is a polyamorous webtoon, and it's about 4 queer men. They're college students, and they all get in a relationship together with each other. And it's about how they are together, like how they communicate. And it's just like the cutest webtoon in the world. Like, it has such a cute art style. The story is just so fun, and I immensely am enjoying this webtoon. It's still ongoing. I think the 2nd season just started. I had the best time. It's really, really great. So highly recommend that. I'm starting to get really hot. Oh God. Getting into really recent reads, like my last 2 books that I have read recently. Finished this one on the first day of Pride, as I should. Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Let's give it up for the best sapphic book currently in existence. This was what I have been wanting from sapphic rom-coms since the beginning of time. A lot of the time, sapphic books just don't really hit the exact spot that I'm hoping that they do. That's very unfortunate for me, a queer woman, to not really have that like list of sapphic works that I can go to and say like, they genuinely made me feel something with like their chemistry and their relationship. Lilac Green Doesn't Care was probably the first sapphic book where I could feel, literally I was getting like butterflies, I was blushing, like I could feel their chemistry coming off of the page, and I loved this story so much and the depth that these characters had. This was like a sapphic book between two women in their early 30s, I believe. One of them is a single mother and one of them is like a struggling artist from New York. It's a small town romance. This book was everything. I fucking loved it so much. The writing was great, the pacing was great, the relationship was steamy, and amazing, amazing. If you are looking for a sapphic book, this is the one to read. This is the one to read. So this has become my favorite sapphic book, sapphic like contemporary. My other favorite sapphic book, where is it on my shelf? Where is it? Oh, it's at the top of my shelf. My other favorite sapphic book of all time is This Is How You Lose a Time War, but that's like such an abstract book. But this one, it's contemporary, it's steamy, it's wonderful, it's filled with chemistry and tension, and I ate it up. It was a great way to start my pride. And the most recent book that I literally finished yesterday, I started it yesterday and I finished it yesterday, which is why I feel like I am on the verge of a really good reading era, maybe for the summer. When He Was Wicked, Bridgerton, book 6, I believe. I'm still slowly making my way through the Bridgerton books. I honestly was going to take like a huge break between those last books and then the rest of the series, because like these seasons are not going to be coming for years to come. But I had been hearing a lot of really good things, and I honestly heard that the last 3 books in the series are the best of all of the books. And so I was curious, and then my dear friend Daria from the channel Full of Lit, she was doing a video where she was reading the entire Bridgerton series and vlogging it and everything. And so that made me even more curious, so I decided to pick up Francesca's book. She is the sibling that comes after Eloise. She's not really in the show much, but she has the best book by far. This book was kind of everything. It definitely outsold all of the other books for me. I think Kate and Anthony's book, I will always hold it close to my heart because I love the season so much. But if we're only talking about the books, Francesca's is the best by far. This is a story about Francesca. She actually gets married before Eloise even gets married. She marries this Scottish man. He's an earl, which is like a really high ranking. It's higher than like a viscount, which Anthony is. So she's rich, she is good to go, she's in love, she's in a love marriage, which is very rare in the society. And she is in love with her husband is in love with her. Her husband has this cousin that he was raised with, that he is, you know, they're basically brothers, extremely close with his cousin, and the cousin also gets very close to Francesca. They have a great relationship and everything. And then unfortunately her husband mysteriously passes away. He kind of has a headache. He goes to sleep to like rest it off, and he does not wake up. So this was a very sudden death, and it rocks Francesca's world and also the husband's cousin's world. His name is Michael. They're just kind of in a shock, and they go through a 4-year-long grieving process separate of one another. So during that 4 years, we have a time jump. Michael comes to take his place as the new earl, and it's a love story between him and Francesca, and it gave me fucking everything. I mean, I read it in one day, in one sitting, so I ended up rating it like 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed that book a lot. I just want to read more historical romance in the future. I do need to delve into something that's not Julia Quinn, but I'm just really invested in the Bridgertons at this point, so I just need to like finish the series, and then like I can move on with my life and read some other stuff. So that is all. What am I going to be reading next? I kind of have no idea. I do have the other 2 Bridgerton books, the last ones from the library. I have Daughter of the Moon Goddess on my bed right now. I'm about to go start that and like see what the vibes are, if I'm in the mood for it. And I don't know, maybe some like reading vlogs in the future, some experimental reading vlogs. Going to start working on the Percy Jackson video very soon. Hopefully I'll have it out the end of June, the beginning of July, I don't know. But yeah, go watch that video if you haven't. Share it with friends if you haven't. It would mean a lot to me. That is the end of the video. I really enjoyed just sitting and chatting, and I miss doing videos like this, so maybe some more in the future. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.